Hello and welcome to this design control video presentation. My name is Paul Vaughan and I will be explaining the core principles of design control. Some of the images we see here present a lighter side to what can go wrong. However, the image of the Hyatt Regency Hotel walkway collapse is very real and serves to remind us of our duty to get design right. In this video, I will be taking you through the following key design elements, checks, and the consequences of getting it wrong. Here, we will use design interfaces and risk assessments as an example of the many design interactions. Design begins at the concept stage. Our involvement would tend to be triggered from the client's requirements. To achieve an effective delivery of the design, it must be planned. Design input is garnered from the design requirements, for example, works information, client requirements, standards, legislation. And using the design input, we will produce our design output, which will be in the form of drawings, detailed design, briefs, etc. Design verification is basically confirming that our design output equals the design input. Design reviews are carried out at milestone stages to ensure that we're not just looking at discrete verification. We could be looking at it as a system. In rail, this is generally in the form of interdisciplinary checks. And design validation looks at the design as a whole and confirms whether the design meets the customer's expectations. The following Rule of 10 model serves as a good reminder in the value and importance of picking up and correcting a design error at the earliest stage. We'll use arbitrary figures. So, a design error picked up during design could cost us £1 to fix, whereas it would cost £10 if found during production. £100 at installation, potentially £1,000 at test and commissioning, and should the error not have been picked up until after commission, we could be looking at a conservative £10,000 to correct it. And if that wasn't bad enough, we need to consider the reputational costs, which are invaluable to everyone. Well, I truly wish that it wasn't the case, but designing activity occurring at the installation and test and commissioning stages can be all too common, which in some cases has prompted whether a build and design ethos is being applied. If we use effective processes, this really ought to be a no-brainer. Although design is considered to be a front-end activity, in essence, the designer will interface with various parties throughout the project lifecycle. Let's look at some of these interfaces. The design team will provide support to ensure that an appropriate technical solution is offered at the bid stage. On acceptance of our bid, our design team will need to engage early with the client's design team to agree the protocols. As well as the client, the design team will most likely need to interface with our subcontractor's designer or a subcontracted design consultant. Here, the designer becomes a project designer and will interface with the project on all pertinent project technical issues. The designer will need to provide the procurement team with a list of products required to meet the design specification. In some cases, this will be in the form of a bill of materials. Here, the installers will flag up any design-related issues to the design team, and likewise with the test and commissioning team, which is effectively the validation stage. In summary, the designer will have many parties to interface with to ensure that an effective design is delivered. It is not uncommon for a change to occur during the detailed design stage, and it is therefore critical that we keep track and manage the change to ensure that related and effective requirements are still being met. Here we have an example of typical design inputs and outputs, and to help highlight the importance of requirements traceability, we have split the design scope into two packages, package A and B. For the purpose of this example, let's say that one of the standards has changed. It is important that we consider and determine whether this change will impact any of our design outputs, and lo and behold, it will require a drawing update in package A and a recalculation in package B. We also need to consider how we manage design output requirements back to the design input requirements. For example, if a concession is approved in package B, we may need to consider requesting a change in the design input, for example, via an approval in principle. All design deliverables must be detailed in the project program schedule, as well as organograms and job descriptions. Design resources and responsibilities should be documented in the project execution plan. Ideally, the design arrangements should be documented in a project design management plan. Appropriate risk can fall under many disciplines and activities, of which the identification of technical risks is key to the safe delivery of the project. The design manager must ensure that all technical risks and opportunities are documented and considered in the applicable risk and opportunity register. If we are performing a designer role on a CDM applicable project, we must ensure that a designer's risk assessment is carried out. Risk assessment reviews can only be effectively achieved by having the right parties in attendance. This slide has been developed to demonstrate the difference between verification and validation, where we will be using a lighting and lighting control system as our example. The specification and room datasheet shall form our design input, and the following components shall represent the design outputs. In terms of verification, we will discrete verify the components against the specification and room datasheet, also known as the design outputs. In terms of validation, once we connect the system, we can achieve this through switching on the lighting system, whereby we can validate the system end product against the specifications and vice versa from design input to the system design output. A design review is held at milestone stages within the development lifecycle, and this will be carried out against the technical requirements. Design reviews are compulsory when developing MEP designs, and like the technical risk assessments, they must be attended by the appropriate personnel, both in terms of competence and the disciplines involved. In rail, these reviews are generally carried out in the form of IDCs, that is, interdisciplinary checks. And no, contrary to some views, a check and approve activity on a drawing does not constitute a design review. As mentioned in the introduction to this presentation, there are very good reasons for why we need to control design changes, and arguably there are none better than the Hyatt Regency Hotel walkway collapse to demonstrate this. In July 1981, two vertically connected walkways collapsed in the Hyatt Regency, Kansas City, killing 114 people and injuring a further 216. The two walkways were suspended from a set of steel tie rods, with the second floor walkway hanging directly under the fourth floor walkway. The fourth floor walkway platform was supported on 3 cross beams suspended by steel rods retained by nuts. The original design specified 3 pairs of rods running from the second floor to the ceiling. The steel company responsible for manufacturing the rods objected to the original plan, as it required the whole of the rod below the fourth floor to be screw threaded in order to screw on to hold the fourth floor walkway in place. An alternate plan in which 2 separate sets of tie rods would be used, one connecting the fourth floor walkway to the ceiling and the other connecting the second floor walkway to the fourth floor walkway, was adopted instead. So here we have the original design showing the continuous threaded rod. This is what was actually built, and here is the consequence of the nuts pulling through the channel beams. As you would expect, an investigation and hearing was held where it was found that there was a serious failing in the design change control process. The review also heard that there was a series of conflicting statements between the manufacturer, installer and the designer, with hardly any of these exchanges having been documented. I've only moved it a couple of inches. It's okay, the client said it would be all right on the phone. How dare you question me? I've been wiring and installing for 20 years. Well, guess what? That does not equal design change control. And I, for one, would not want to be stood in front of a judge saying that.